Hey, and this week in pharmacy, I'm here with Dr. Mark Fulton from SoftWriters, and he's the host, if you don't know, of Framework Focus. And if you don't know, you should subscribe to Framework Focus, Mark, right?
That's right.
So on this week in pharmacy, we're going to jump into, one of the most pressing aspects of pharmacy to me as I pay attention to the APHA's attention around giving more services and more care to pharmacists in incident to billing situations, digging down into disease state specifics, senior care. And the reason why senior care is so prevalent is, as we know, 11,000 new 65-year-olds for the rest of the year coming into become 65 years old every month for the rest of the year until December 31st. And it's really a record-setting time in the history of our nation with regards to the peak of our baby boomers and the peak of our 65-year-olds. What aspect of that per se has impact on assuring that community, that long-term care pharmacies are efficient, and with the efficiency comes technology?
No, absolutely, Todd. We've heard it called the silver tsunami. There's probably other really cool euphemisms for it. But yeah, what we have is a large sector of the population who is aging into those golden years, into those post-work, retirement years. And a significant percentage of those will need long-term care. It's merely a fact. And so I think from a position of stability, long-term care pharmacy is here to stay. I think we will continue to have folks who receive long-term care, whether that setting is in a traditional skilled nursing facility or assisted living or broadening into the home care sector. We've seen a lot of trends that support the idea that long-term care, not only is it here and will continue, but it in fact will grow as the needs of the aging population continue. Recently, you have a news article. You've seen a lot of things about the growth and investment that's being driven in the long-term care space. If you look at long-term care facilities, we see that the cost of capital has actually stabilized and even come down just a scotch. Interest rates aren't great, but they're not as bad as they used to be. We see more and more people investing into new structures, new buildings. We see mergers and acquisitions across the long-term care space. Bright Spring Health recently announced some new acquisitions in Maryland. They're getting bigger. Really, in the pharmacy and facility world, the larger enterprises continue to grow larger, and they continue to acquire these other smaller businesses.
CVS Health has had a lot of attention around the expansion of long-term care services. Their focus on Omnicare is a pretty big deal, but that is stalled right now. And the reason why I want to bring that to our listeners' understanding is, if you are a long-term care pharmacy throughout the country, you may see an opportunity right now to service some of those long-term care organizations and facilities in your area, and assuring them that, hey, listen, we're not going through any stalled service, or we're able to service you, just so that we keep services moving. We don't want the public to think that there's any fractures in the stability of long-term care pharmacy, because from a macro perspective, there isn't. But when big news organizations come up and big powerhouses come up like this, that say to the public that there's something stalled or there's something in review with the FTC or something, you want long-term care pharmacies, private and public, to take full advantage of that in order to secure services for our long-term care facilities.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, CVS is in the news all the time. I think they're just an easy target in many aspects. They're a big company. Everybody knows who they are. When we just focus on the long-term care aspect, I think the challenges that Omnicare had aren't necessarily unique to Omnicare.
Right.
And
agreed.
And patients, they have flexibility, right? And because patients, especially in assisted living and home care states, they can use whatever pharmacy they choose, and so that creates opportunity, I think, for the right pharmacy to be able to step up and say, look, you're not going to compete on product. Everybody has the same drugs.
Yep.
But it's the level of service. Long-term care is really about a type of care.
Yep.
It's a level of care that's above and beyond what you'd see in a retail setting, and the patients are typically more acute, and they have higher needs and more complicated drug regimens and more complex disease states. And so, when I think about what's happening kind of at the macroeconomic level, yeah, we're seeing some disruptions, we're seeing some pain points uh, for long-term care, and the biggest enterprises are probably going to feel that a little bit bigger than some of the smaller outfits. But again, I think that there's challenges across the spectrum.
All right, I want to tap into your experiences, and the power of our network is, if I can't be somewhere at like a major conference that's really impactful to different sectors of pharmacy, I have people in our network, aka Mark Fulton, who shows up to places to make sure that the coverage is taking place. So you got back from the MHA conference. What I want to ask is, what kind of discussion is there from our long-term care pharmacies that are traditional, pure long-term care pharmacies, that's skilled, assisted living? We know the expansion of home care is going to go crazy. Okay. And the fusion between pure long-term care players and the combo shop players are in a very sweet spot. And here's the reason. We know that community pharmacy is going to be looked at as a major opportunity for community pharmacies to start tapping into some home care services and long-term care services, which they are now calling long-term care pharmacy at home.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your opinion? I mean, SoftWriters have always been a leader in the pure long-term care play.
Mm-hmm.
They have been paying attention to the community pharmacy expansion. Talk to us about the interesting fusion opportunity there are for long-term care pharmacies to dig deep into home care.
Oh, absolutely, Todd. When we look at the explosion into home care, and it's already happening, and we have customers today that are servicing the home care market. It really depends on what long-term care looks like in your neck of the woods. Pharmacy in Florida is going to have different needs than a pharmacy in Washington or California. So when I think about the transition to home care, and I think about the opportunities that there are for pharmacies that are in that traditional long-term care space that you talked about, we're seeing an expansion of services right across the board. It's either you're independent retail and you want to scale up and start adding some long-term care type services,
Yep.
or you do a traditional long-term care model and you say, okay, I want to expand and see if I can do this for the home care patient. Now, I think if you're already in a traditional long-term care setting, you have a leg up. And the reason I say that is because you're already doing the things you need to do to be able to build at that higher service level for a long-term standard of care.
And contracting. Let's go
Yes.
back to MHA. MHA has been a leader in helping pharmacies, long-term care pharmacies, to leverage their wholesale agreements, GPO agreements, PSAO, I think is the acronym, but insurance. I think of organizations like billers that are kind of focused on those services. How was the MHA conference? How was the the reception there and the energy?
Oh, the MHA conference had a ton of energy this year. It was down in Orlando. A lot of things going on in Orlando.
I know. We just got back from the APHA, the American Pharmacists Association.
I think I had 2 conferences back to back there last year. But all that aside, the vibe at the MHA conference was one of confidence. There was a lot of confidence there. And we have this very post-pandemic mentality of, okay, we've kind of been battle hardened. We've had things tested against us. We know what we're doing. We know how to do it. I just want to drive through and execute. There's a real focus now on executing with precision, executing with deliberateness, being very calculated in the risks you take and in the business decisions that you make, because as we've seen, the outcomes aren't guaranteed.
Yep.
And the pandemic hardened things a lot. Your good employees stayed.
Yep.
And there's a camaraderie and there's a ferocity, to the business environment now where, hey, we need to strike. As a pharmacy, we're stepping up, we're owning this new scope of practice that we've been given in many states. We're owning this new space as the owners of vaccine services, and we're safeguarding through our GPOs, through our arrangements, through our really strong management, we are safeguarding our own profits because we're being really mindful about what we buy, what we pay, and how we price and bill things. So that way we stay in the game, we stay above water, and we're not adding to, kind of this prescription drug high cost nightmare, to the best of our ability for the people that we serve.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you're listening to this show right now, This Week in Pharmacy, if you're in long-term care pharmacy and you're curious and working with the Framework LTC team, the SoftWriter team, as well as the depth of what Dr. Mark Fulton brings to the table, as somebody who really has worked not only the bench and the transition between bench consumer and in patient care and long-term care, reach out to frameworkltc.com. Once again, that's frameworkltc.com. Mark, it's been great to have you here at This Week in Pharmacy.
Oh, my pleasure, Todd. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
This episode is sponsored by Independent Pharmacy Cooperative, widely known as IPC. Established in 1983, IPC is the nation's largest group purchasing organization owned by independent pharmacy. With a mission of maximizing the success of community pharmacists, IPC works to provide members with access to effective programs and services designed to enhance profitability for independent pharmacy. Read more about our mission by checking out our website at ipcrx.com. That's ipcrx.com.
Podcast, we will discuss 7 game-changing considerations you haven't thought of for pharmacogenomics pharmacists in light of the FDA's new LDT rules.
All right, pharmacists, listen up. Today's episode dives into a hot-button issue with the FDA. They've recently proposed a stricter regulatory approach for lab-developed tests, or LDTs. Now, LDTs are a broad category, but for us pharmacists, one key area of concern is pharmacogenomics, or PGX testing. These genetic tests help us tailor medication plans to individual patients. But here's the worry. If the FDA gets its way, the skyrocketing costs of developing these tests could push them out of reach, potentially having them vanish overnight. We'll explore the potential impact on PGX testing and what it means for your practice. Stay tuned.
Here are the 7 considerations. Quality assurance versus timeliness. While the FDA's risk-based framework aims to ensure the quality and reliability of LDTs, it could also slow down the approval process for new tests. Pharmacists may feel compromised in their ability to quickly adopt new genomic tests that could benefit their patients. This delay in accessing new tests could mean missed opportunities for optimizing patient care. Cost implications. Regulatory compliance often comes with increased costs, and this is likely to make LDTs and now in vitro diagnostics more expensive. This added cost could limit the pharmacist's ability to offer these tests to patients, especially those who are uninsured or underinsured. This could create an ethical dilemma for pharmacists who want to provide the best care but are constrained by financial factors. Number 3, operational challenges and training. New FDA guidelines may necessitate changes in operational protocols and result in additional training for pharmacists. The time and resources spent on adapting to new regulations could detract from the time that pharmacists have patient consultations and for care. This might make these pharmacists feel compromised in their primary role as healthcare providers.
To avoid legal problems with your pharmacy, call me at 302-252-6959.
Liability and ethical considerations. Stricter regulations could reduce liability, but may raise ethical considerations. Pharmacists may feel ethically compromised if they have to withhold potentially beneficial but unapproved tests from a patient. This could create a conflict between following regulations and providing personalized care. Additionally, these tests may themselves not be available because the manufacturers, the developers, may decide not to offer them. Number 5. Data interpretation and clinical decisions. While more stringent regulations could lead to more reliable data, they do make the test more complex. Pharmacists may feel compromised if they're not adequately trained to interpret these complex test results, and this could lead to hesitation in making clinical decisions. Number 6, patient trust and expectations. Enhanced regulations could boost patient trust, but also raise expectations for pharmacogenomic services. Managing heightened patient expectations while navigating regulatory constraints could put pharmacists pharmacists in a difficult position, making them feel compromised in their ability to help meet patient needs. Number 7, market dynamics and testability. Stricter regulations could discourage smaller labs, reducing the variety of tests available. A reduced variety of tests will limit the pharmacist's ability to offer a comprehensive range of pharmacogenomic services. This will limit and compromise the scope of service. The FDA's new approach to regulating LDTs therefore presents a complex landscape for pharmacists, especially those offering pharmacogenomic services. While the aim is to enhance patient safety and test reliability, this could compromise pharmacists in their ability to provide optimal patient care. Balancing regulatory compliance with patient needs will be a challenge, but it's an essential task for helping patients and pharmacists move forward. Need help with updating or reviewing your pharmacogenomics program?
Reach out to me right now at darshan@kulkarnilawfirm.com.